Hello and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be taking a look at the best tanks for the season of the Jade Manticore. I'm going to be giving you some recommendations on the best heavies, best mediums, the best TDs, and I'll give you a light tank recommendation based off what's happened to some of the tanks, whether they've been buffed or nerfed, and what has happened to some of the abilities that you have within Onslaught. So, let's start off with the mouse. The mouse is an old faithful pick for Onslaught. Why? Well, it has the highest HP pool, it's got great armor when angled properly, so you're taking a frontal fight, and its DPM and its gun handling allows you to effectively trade with your high HP pool to have a good impact in a game. However, it is not the perfect tank, it is slow, and therefore cannot rotate particularly brilliantly. So it is definitely a pick that is limited to city-based maps where you control the fight and it's as close to you as possible. However, in those situations, it is counterable by taking crossfire. It can only angle basically frontally, so it's definitely not perfect. And high pen tanks like the E4 and the version 4 will begin to pick this tank apart with their high pen APCR and high pen heat. Its ability of field repairs is particularly useful, especially if you're playing with a platoon mate. You can heal each other, you can share the ability around, but in general, it's useful mid to late game just to heal a few hit points back, just to ensure you can secure the game. Next tank is the T110E5. I got crucified for not including this within my last list. A lot of you were rather angry. Well, here it is. The E5 is particularly useful because of its 340mm of heat penetration. It's really nice against tanks like the Mouse and the E100. Its armor is particularly troll, especially if an opponent doesn't have the time to aim for your lower plate, your cupola, or your side. So in a brawling situation where they are taking quick shots to try and keep their DPM, maximize their DPM, you might bounce one or two crucial shots. It has the second highest available DPM. What do I mean by that? Well, it sits behind the T57 Heavy in DPM of tanks that you can play within Onslaught. There are other tanks with higher DPM. You can't play them in this mode. However, it is vulnerable to high penetration heat from tanks like the version 4 and the Object 268. They will just punch through your hull. And its ability, whilst useful, and it has been buffed, there are definitely better abilities out there. For example, field repairs that the Mouse has. The Bounty Hunter ability, whilst nice, decreasing your reload for a very short period of time and giving you kind of like a vampire effect. You heal some back from the damage that you do. There are just better abilities, unfortunately, and the buff hasn't really increased the relevancy of the ability. The next tank is going to be the Canopener, and this is a little bit of a controversial pick. Some people might disagree with me on this, but I think it's particularly useful because of its flexibility. Its double shot mode is incredibly useful, especially in those city-based brawls where you can control that fight frontally, where this tank's armor is focused. It can use its single shot mode to have great gun handling and DPM, and it then gets the flexibility with its double shot, allowing it to do 800 damage incredibly quickly to a tank that might need that, so potentially a key tank that might run, or a tank that might kill an opponent. It just gives it flexibility, and in a 7v7 mode like Onslaught, as much flexibility as you can get is just really valuable. So that's why I think the Canopener is particularly useful. Maybe one, maybe two on a team, maximum. However, it does suffer from some issues. Low gold penetration. It is slow still, and it will struggle to rotate. Similar issue to the Mouse, for example. It also has the same issues of ability as the T110E5. And if opponents get your side, it is weak, and it will be overmatched, and it will be picked apart because it is a pretty big side profile that is not particularly well armored. So there is that. And then for the final heavy tank, it is the T57 Heavy. Well, what to say about it? It's best-in-class DPM, combined with incredible 340mm of heat penetration. It's mobile, so it can make aggressive plays and play like an assassin. It can catch opponents out who've maybe overextended or not ran in time. The T57 Heavy is a tank that is particularly useful to play on the offensive. However, it takes a good player to play the T57 Heavy well, because you have to have the game knowledge and the game ability to dictate and determine whether a situation is beneficial for you to push, to trade your damage effectively, or whether maybe that is not the best scenario to push or play within and to maybe rotate. It does suffer from the issue every single tank with a clip has. It is vulnerable when clipped. Good players, good platoons will count your shots and will know when you are reloading. And if you're vulnerable and pushable, they will push and kill you. That is the nature of the T57 Heavy, and that's why I said it takes a good player to play it, to know where and when to be at the right time. If you think you're that player, I would recommend the T57 Heavy. It's a good, fun tank. For TDs, we have the Grille starting off, and some people might disagree with me again. However, the ability on the Grille is beautiful. Its ability allowing it to do 1000 alpha, providing it's unspotted when it shoots. Mwah, absolutely beautiful, especially for open maps, right? This is not a tank to pick on an Ensk. This is a tank to pick on a map where opponents are going to cross through the open, spotted. You can shoot them unspotted. Maybe you can support an ally who's taken an aggressive position. Real maps that pop to mind straight away are Oyster Bay. I always love playing a Grille on Oyster Bay. There are a lot of positions that it can play, a lot of positions where it can provide really useful support. It's mobile, so it can do those rotations. It can swap flanks pretty effectively to continue pumping out that 1000 alpha. Its penetration does allow it to do that. However, it does suffer from the usual things that a TD like the Grille suffers from, with it has low HP, can't trade particularly effectively. If it gets spotted, it will get HE'd, and you will kind of die pretty quickly, especially if the opponents are intelligent. They will go, that's a Grille, let's kill it before it keeps putting 1000 damage shots into us. And as I said, it's incredibly situational and map dependent. And in a way, you need to be a good TD player, have good aim, good knowledge of positions where you can get cross shots in, crossfire, and good knowledge of when to run and when to push. That's the Grille. T124 next, and this is, and once again, an old faithful, old familiar favourite of Onslaught. It's had its highs, it's still relevant today. They have nerfed the Juggernaut ability twice. They've nerfed it twice now. Despite that, it still maintains its relevance just because its ability by nature is so strong. Taking less damage, it's just useful. It allows you to trade, especially when you have 750 alpha. If you're taking 530 from a Bliskavitska, for example, that shoots you, yeah, you are just going to be better off. It's as simple as that, really. Great penetration. Its gun issues are to an extent mitigated by the Onslaught buff, so the dispersion, like mitigation factor. However, it is still slightly troll. One of my favourite things, though, with the E4 is its HE rounds. Its HE rounds to counter mediums, lights, and the rear of heavy tanks. Mwah. Hitting a tank for 1.1k is just simply beautiful in Onslaught, where every bit of HP matters. If you can do 1.1k and only take 200 damage in return from a medium tank because you have your ability popped, yeah. Now you can start to see the power of the E4. However, it is trackable in one shot when it has its ability popped, so it has one singular track HP, which is counterable by tracking it and flanking it. So it does have its issues. However, if played well, if played intelligently, if it doesn't get isolated, the E4 is a brilliant supportive tank. Pretty much for most maps. Open maps, it will struggle because it is slow. So it's more likely to get cross-shot or outplayed. But on a city-based map or a medium-sized map where you can control the engagement, the E4 is brilliant. Then we've got the Object 268 to finish off the TDs. This tank has just received a massive round of buffs in the latest update. It's significantly increased its relevance, I feel, especially when not just the tank has been buffed, but its ability has also been buffed. It's kind of made a combo where I think the 268 is going to be very relevant on certain maps. For example, maps where the engagement is close range, however, the 268 has the ability to rotate. Tundra springs to mind, potentially tank maps like Pilsen, where you can do shots, but you can also fall back into safety when required. How its ability works and how its improved ability is going to work is for every shot that you do, it decreases your reload. If you kill a tank, it decreases your reload by 95%. It's very strong, and there is a lot of potential in that ability. The tank itself will support that with its 395mm of penetration. It's relatively slow. However, It's quick enough that it can run from a flank. However, if it does get pushed upon, it will get outplayed, tracked, flanked. Its ability does require you to be exposed, however. So whilst the ability has a lot of potential, in order to utilize that potential, you do have to be exposed for potentially a long period of time. Good opponents will notice that and they will pick you off. They will try and outplay you, track you, get around you, whatever they can do to prevent you from having a game impact. Good players will do that, and you will face that in Onslaught. Its armor is also not particularly reliable. It's pretty predictable to penetrate if you're shooting at it. You shoot heat anywhere at its frontal lower hull, yeah, you're penning it. So there's the 268. I think it's going to be a pretty meta pick. However, there are going to be more relevant tanks like the E4, for example, just because its Juggernaut ability is so flexible and utilizable on most maps and situations. So, for medium tanks, starting off with the E50M or the 430U. Both apply to this situation. Both are mobile into a position, and they have the ability to punish, so the Fury ability to increase its DPM and its reload, which in a way makes it the natural counter to another medium tank we're going to look at in a second, the CS63. A tank that likes to take aggressive POIs, the E50M can rock up slightly later with its ability, same with the 430U, and just go bang, 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 and counter it. It has a great HP pool and a base DPM, so without its ability to support that. However, in a brawl, heavy tanks will just bully it, both the 430U and the E50M. And when its ability is on cooldown, people will know that, and they will overpush you. So they will, instead of taking a 1v1, where possible, they will take a 2v1, especially when you don't have your ability, knowing that you are vulnerable. And because of that, it does rely on teammates supporting you. You can't particularly play 1v1 with this tank, especially when you're playing against other mediums who might have slightly higher DPM. So there is that. Then the CS63. Well, this tank is also, once again, old faithful, old familiar. Basically, it's the go-to medium tank for most people in Onslaught. Why? Well, it has its speed mode, which is incredible for taking key points of interest, so strikes and vision areas, and just positions in general, so crossfire angles, it's brilliant for that. It has its small strike for resetting points of interest and cap, very useful in attack defense, sorry, in encounter, not attack defense. Its armor is troll, so in a brawl situation, if a tank's firing APCR at you, it will bounce random funky shots off its upper hull and areas of its extreme turret, so that's funny. However, it does struggle, especially versus other medium tanks like the 430U, like the E50M, who can and will ram it, bully it, push it around, face hug it, and there isn't much that the CS can do about it apart from try and run and maybe try and get it out of the situation. It does struggle, especially in those kind of all-out brawl situations, because it just lacks the HP and the armor to be particularly effective. Its gun is also troll, unfortunately. Its gun will not hit every shot, and you will notice that, and that is a big issue with the CS. And it also suffers from low penetration, so fighting against high armor TDs and heavy tanks, yeah, you will struggle. And then finally, that brings us to my light tank recommendation, and it's a controversial one. I will say straight away, and I'll preface this with, if you are new to Onslaught, new to playing light tanks, and you have an RHM, play the RHM. You will perform better in an RHM than you will in a Tesak. A good player in a Tesak, however, will outplay an average player in an RHM, I believe 95% of the time. The Tesak's HE clip simply melts an RHM, especially if the RHM is not on full HP. So, that's why I recommend the Tesak. Its ability, whilst being nerfed again, which is justified because it is such a strong ability, its ability just gives so much vital information that otherwise you wouldn't get. So just having one on your team, especially on open maps, is still incredibly vital because it gets you that early game info. Yes, its info is now going to be limited because of its nerf. However, it's still info that you wouldn't have before, and it can and will, on certain maps, influence the way your team plays and potentially influence your win rate. It is also the natural counter to some TDs with that Juggernaut ability. They're 1 HP track. You can track, flank. However, as I said, the Tesak, you need a high skill level. You need to know light tanks. You need to know the mode. You need to have a good knowledge of positions. If you don't have that, pick an RHM or an EBR, and you will just do better. But if you have that, I recommend the Tesak. Give it a go. But there you go, guys. That is my recommendations for Onslaught, Season of the Jade Manticore, which starts this Wednesday. If you do disagree with me in any of these, or you think I've missed any tanks, do let me know down below. I'm open to conversation. If you did like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. I'm going for about 3K, probably by the end of the year. It's quite an ambitious target, but we'll see if we can hit it. And I'll see you all again very soon.